Well, thank you, friend. Shabbat Shalom. My apologies because I seem to be having some problems with the sound equipment. So hopefully it'll be okay. Yeah, thank you all for your comments last week. It seemed like a lot of you really enjoyed the show. Thank you, thank you, thank you. I'm so glad when things we look at strike a chord. The topic of siblings, that's something that, seems to be close to everybody in one form or another. And it seems to affect many people. I've seen instances, as I'm sure you all have too, where some siblings are so close that you think it's not natural. And isn't it great to see such love? It really is the truest way. We should love everyone unconditionally. And I have seen some where it is just as if the siblings were all single children who never have anything to do with the other. And there is, of course, everything in between. And I'm sure you have all seen that too. And remember, friends, whichever path you walk, you pass on. So nothing either starts or ends with you. And we will see that in this parsha. Now, the twin tale of sibling relations, last week and this, really do complete an amazing picture. But before we get to that, let us all send some healing energy out for Anne, who let me know that her niece Devin Smith, her brother Alan, and his partner Kathy are in need. Mishaberach imotenu makor habracha lavotenu. Bless those in need of healing and help us find the courage to make our lives a blessing. Let us say Amen. And friends, you may or may not be aware that from ancient times onward, the book of Psalms has been used for expressing prayers of healing energy. And if you are interested, we can do a session on it. But in the meantime, for any of you who know someone who is in troubled times, recite any of Psalms 16, 20, 25, 26, 38, 54, or 81. And think of those immortal words of Paul Simon. When you're weary, feeling small, when tears are in your eyes, I will dry them all. I'm on your side when times get rough and friends just can't be found. Like a bridge over troubled waters, I will lay me down. Who doesn't want to know that there is somebody there for them? That in itself is a healing thing, my friends. And if you know someone recovering from illness, recite any of Psalms 6, 30, 41, 88, or 103. And there are other Psalms, and there are other instances of when Psalms come in handy. There's a whole series of books on them. And, we will, like I say, if anybody's interested, devote an evening to talking about them. Now, as I mentioned last time, we are rapidly approaching the twin festivals of light and miracles, Hanukkah and Christmas. And while there are some tremendous similarities we will talk about, there are also some differences which we will talk about. And of course, we are starting to be inundated with Christmas movies at this time of the year. And friends, I hardly miss any. There does not seem to be any religion to them anymore. They're almost all Santa-based. And who does not love Santa? He brings gifts. And what Jewish kid didn't grow up wishing Santa would make a mistake and stop by his place just once? As I said last week, I wouldn't mind seeing a new green field under the proverbial tree. You'd almost wonder these days why Christmas even seems to have a religious affiliation. Goodbye, Jesus. Hello, Santa. Now, I remember watching Saturday Night Live when it began and was funny, and when there were much fewer channels, but for some reason, way more choice in what to watch. And I remember when they explored the Christmas Hanukkah theme by having Santa needing help delivering toys and cool stuff, and calling on his Jewish counterpart, Hanukkah Harry, whose workshop sat at the top of Mount Sinai. You remember that? And he comes to the rescue delivering socks and underwear, dreidels, and chocolate Hanukkah gelt to all the kids. The Jewish kids would be used to it, but the kids who normally get Christmas presents, well, they were just a little bit less than enthralled. But it was the epitome of interfaith cooperation, as we saw that we are all one, deep down the same, except on one hand, We have a folk character that caters to wants and desires, and on the other, one that caters to needs. Kind of like the twin aspects of self. Well, we all have to have our wants, needs, and desires fulfilled also, and friends, we see that in these two parshas. Wants and needs, desires and responsibilities. The twin aspects of life. Now, as I said, I watch all the Santa Claus films. And there have been some pretty horrid ones, like Santa Claus versus the Martians with the great Pia Zadora. And although I've never come across one, I like to think that somewhere out there must be a Hercules versus Santa Claus movie. After all, they did have Hercules versus the Moon Man. But the other night, I watched the worst Santa movie I have ever seen. It was like a lousy remake of Beastly, with Christmas thrown in just to get distribution. And I sat there thinking to myself, how great it is that we neither get inundated by nor see lousy Hanukkah movies. And friends, there is a common theme to this. Thanksgiving, Hanukkah, Christmas. The time for family. Well, pull up a seat. We are witnesses to the ultimate family dynamic. We are about to see a family reunion. One brother is tormented and haunted by a bargain he made over something he didn't understand. The other embarks on a life filled with fear, deception, and manipulation. How will they meet up again? What will happen? Great drama, great questions, in a parsha referred to by commentators as the confrontation. In Genesis 32:1, we have the beginning of the reunion. Messengers of God come to Jacob, and we know that messengers of God are angels, and we are going to see fewer and fewer angels, just like we will see fewer instances of God's interaction with man. We learn nothing about these messengers, but we are told that Jacob then sends his own messengers because he is told Esau is coming. Vayishlach, and he sent. He is Jacob, and he sends his messengers to placate Esau and tell him that he's been with Laban. And Rashi suggested that this meant, I lived temporarily with him, but I learned nothing from his bad ways. But friends, I don't understand that, because the reality is Jacob does in fact learn from Laban. Jacob the deceiver met a deceiver, and accordingly learned how it felt to receive an injustice, not just how it felt to dish it out. And I suspect he learned that it hurts. And when that happens, people can change. They can see the damage done and work to ensure that it never happens again, or they can be stuck in a pattern. Jacob is probably the most human biblical character that you will ever see. How many of you hurt from any of the injustices, if there were any, of course, that you have committed? Did it change your outlook on life? And what you will notice, my friends, just as the last parsha was the parsha of stones as a recurring theme, this parsha is the parsha of the face as the theme. As we see in Genesis 32:21, let me appease his face with the offering that's going in front of me, and after that I'll look on his face, and maybe he'll show me a kindly face. The word face recurs 5 times in this line, and throughout these chapters, it's part of the term that is translated as the preposition in front of or ahead of, which in Hebrew is lepanei. It's an amazing scene and an incredible description. Jacob must face his past. He must face his brother who he wronged, in the midst of which will come the account of his only immediate contact with God in his life, his struggle, after which he will say, I've seen God face to face. And it is these 2 encounters, first with God and then with his brother, which will then be brought together as he says to Esau, I've seen your face like seeing God's face. And friends, there is, of course, pure irony in this, because Jacob left 20 years earlier in the wake of his deception which was succeeded and successful only because his blind father could not see his face. I've just seen a face. I can't forget the time or place where we just met. You see, in biblical Hebrew, placate is appease his face. And as he said, let me placate him with the tribute that goes before me, and after I shall look on his face. He is still deathly afraid of how Esau is going to be towards him. By his actions, you can see he fully expects Esau to still want to kill him. And of course, in keeping with the whole in mind, we will have the theme of face come back later as the Torah ends with the Song of Moses and God saying he will hide his face from man. And friends, it has been hidden ever since. I have never known the likes of this. I've been alone and I have missed things and kept out of sight. He has missed things and kept out of sight because all of his actions are acts from fear. And Jacob was greatly afraid, and he was distressed, and he divided the people that were with him, and the sheep, and the cattle, and the camels, into two camps. And he thought, should Esau come to the one camp and strike it, the remaining camp will escape. Two camps. And friends, there is a dualistic division that runs through the whole Jacob story. Twin brothers struggling over a blessing that cannot be halved. Two sisters struggling over a husband's love. Flocks divided into unicolored and multicolored animals. Children divided, some from love, some from resentment. Jacob's material blessing now divided into two camps. My friends, he has immediately retreated into his mental world of fear. And I will remind you that fear is what imprisons us. And the holiest holy day in the Torah was Passover, because it was the celebration of freedom over fear. We see the insidiousness of what fear has done and how it will dominate this man and his family. Save me from the hand of my brother, from the hand of Esau, for I fear him. Friends, some incredible things happen in this parsha. We get an amazing insight into the continuing character of Jacob. We have the famous wrestling with God, an angel, a night spirit. Your guess is as good as mine or anyone else's. We read about his daughter Dinah, and we see the final descent of the soul of man as the seeds are sown for the generations in confinement before the struggle of man's ascendancy begins again with Moses. And he got up that night, took his 2 wives and his 2 maids and his 11 boys, and crossed the Jabbok ford. Not once, never, is there mention of his daughter Dinah, who in a background way is a crucial figure in this parsha. Jacob was left alone, and a man wrestled with him until the break of dawn, and he saw that he had not won out against him. We all know the story. The man names him Yisrael, which is interpreted to mean struggles or wrestles with God. Let me go, for dawn is breaking. And he said, I will not let you go unless you bless me. And he said to him, what is your name? And he said, Jacob. And he said, not Jacob shall your name hence be said, but Yisrael. For you have struggled with God and man, and won out. And friends, all of us who are the children of Israel are the ones who have struggled with God, and who has not. And Jacob names the place Peniel, meaning I have seen God face to face, and I came out alive. Reminds me of one of those 5-minute sentences in a foreign film, which gets a 2-word subtitle, and you sit there and go, that's what he said? Friends, Abraham's name change was a mere rhetorical flourish compared to this one. And once his name is changed from Abram, he is always referred to as Abraham. But of all the patriarchs, Jacob is the one whose life is truly entangled in moral ambiguity. As I said, he is the most human of all. The narrative continues to refer to this patriarch in most instances as Jacob. Israel does not really replace his name, but becomes instead a synonym for it. And the binary world continues, reflected in the parallelism of biblical poetry, where Jacob is often found used in the first half of a line, and Israel in the second. Who he fought, we do not know. Based on the fight, we're pretty sure it was neither God nor one of God's regular angelic messengers, and some of our sages suspect it was some kind of night spirit, since, like a vampire, it could not take the light of day. Friends, the image of wrestling has been implicit throughout the Jacob story. It is grabbing Esau's heel as he emerges from the womb. It is striving with Esau for birthright and blessing. In his rolling away the huge stone from the mouth of the well, and in his multiple dealings with Laban. Now, in this culminating moment of his life story, the characterizing image of wrestling is made explicit and literal. Various commentators have wondered whether this episode also is from the dream world. And perhaps the real point, as Jacob's adversary himself suggests when he refuses to reveal his name, is that he resists identification. He is the embodiment of antagonism in Jacob's dark night of the soul. And he may very well be an externalization of all that Jacob has to wrestle with within himself. As John Lennon sang in Number 9 Dream, took a walk down the street through the heat-whispered trees. I thought I could hear somebody call out my name as it started to rain. Ah, Boakawa, Pusey, Pusey. Friends, all of the encounters, all of the significant encounters of his life leave a lasting mark on Jacob, and his encounter with the unfathomable other is no different. They all resonate with the larger sense of life powerfully recorded in his story. Experience exacts many prices, and he bears his inward scars as he lived onward. His memory of fleeing across the Jordan, his fear of the brother who he has wronged, and soon his grief for the beloved wife he loses, and then for the beloved son he thinks he has lost. I am sure in our brief sojourn thus far this year, you've noticed there's really very little character development in Adam, Eve, Noah, Abraham, Sarah, Isaac, or Rebekah, all of whom remain constant figures throughout the stories about them. Jacob changes, and the matter of deception is intimately related to that development. Esau had pointed out Jacob's very name connotes deception, to catch. Jacob starts out as a manipulator, but he is changed after his experience in Mesopotamia. He has been the deceiver and the deceived. He has hurt and been hurt. He has struggled and prospered. He has been active, but now becomes like his father, passive, seeking to appease his brother and avoid strife and risk. But with all the change that takes place, he is remarkably still driven by fear. Upon getting ready for seeing Esau, he splits his possessions from least important to most. And he placed the maids and their children first, and Leah and her children following, and Rachel and Joseph last. As a suppliant does, he bowed 7 times on his way to see Esau, his brother, and the reunion culminates in Genesis 33:4. And Esau ran to him and embraced him and fell on his neck and kissed him. Esau had forgiven and moved on. Jacob was still dominated and even trapped by his fear of having stolen and deceived. Our sages and biblical commentators and the Midrashim report how evil and horrid Esau was. There is a Midrash which says everything Esau did was motivated by hatred, except his reunion with Jacob. But friends, this was out of the need to vilify him. There is no written record supporting this evilness of him anywhere. Esau wants them to travel together, but Jacob pretends he will only hold Esau up. So Esau offers to post some men with Jacob to help him. But this offer to post men is not attractive to him because Jacob's afraid. And he tells Esau that he will meet him in Seir. But in fact, the next 2 verses report that Esau does go back to Seir. But Jacob turns the other way, and goes to Sukkot. Wow, look at what fear can do, my friends. It is inculcated in him, and you see it more and more. It even dominates the only story about his daughter, Dinah. It's not talked about much, and she is hardly mentioned. We think only of the 12 sons of Jacob. We will also see how the right of firstborn has no meaning to him. It meant nothing when he usurped his brother's rights. It meant nothing in his bridal choice. And we will see later that it means nothing when he demotes Reuben for his transgression and Shimon and Levi from first and second status because he feels they left him vulnerable. Everything is about him, not about the higher roles of ethics, morals, or law. The story of Dinah is a story of love called a story of rape. Shechem loved Dinah, and the words used are took, lay, degraded. Genesis 34:2. He took her and lay with her and degraded her. And so this is commonly treated as a story of rape. But the nature of the act is not in fact clear from the wording. While the three key terms used here, took, lay, degraded, appear to suggest force, all three are used without such a meaning in the Torah's laws concerning marriage and rape. To take a woman, lacha, is used to mean marriage. To lie with, sakab, and to degrade, ina, are both used in a case that is specifically ruled not to be rape. Now, while we cannot be sure if it was rape, we can be sure that it leads to the son's deception and provides the justification for their deception, something that is now built into this family. Shechem was in love with Dinah, wanted to marry her. Shechem's father Hamor proposes the two groups intermarry and share the community and become one. Give your daughters to us and take our daughters to you and live with us. The land will be before you. Live and go around in it and take possession in it. And Jacob's sons answered Shechem and Hamor his father with deception as they spoke. We aren't able to do this thing, to give our sister to a man who has a foreskin, because that's a disgrace to us. Only this way will we consent to you, if you'll be like us, every male among you, to be circumcised. And we'll give our daughters to you and take your daughters to us, and we'll live with you, and we'll become one people. And it was on the third day when they were herding, and two of Jacob's sons, Shimon and Levi, Dinah's brothers, each took his sword, and they came upon the city stealthily, and they killed every male. Jacob's upset, not because it was wrong, but because of his fear. And Jacob said to Shimon and to Levi, you've caused me anguish, making me odious to those who live in the land, to the Canaanite and to the Perizzite. And I'm few in number, and they'll be gathered against me and strike me, and I'll be destroyed, I and my house. Morals, ethics, a very interesting patriarch, a very human one, and a character allowing the development of character. How well would that great Dion song have been if it were Abraham Martin and Billy Carter? Anybody here seen my old friend Abraham? Can you tell me where he's gone? He freed a lot of people, but it seems the good they die young. You know, I just looked around and he's gone. Then as now, the stories that count, the stories of the patriarchs, are the stories of freedom. Now, his beloved wife Rachel has Benjamin, and she dies. This is the saddest and the most ironic consequence of all of the deceptions in the narrative. Jacob had unwittingly put a curse on her by telling Laban, let the one with whom you'll find your gods not live. Rachel had hidden them and told her father that she was menstruating, so as to keep him from searching her. Now she dies in childbirth. That serves to reveal her deception, that she could not have been menstruating, and as the horrible fulfillment of Jacob's words. Many to this day stop at her roadside grave, where you can buy string and sacred oil. Isaac dies. Esau and Jacob come together to bury him, and we are told Esau leaves and we get a genealogy of his descendants in order to establish that this branch of the family was now away from Canaan, because Jacob is about to move into Isaac's estate, where we will begin the Joseph Chronicles, the most storied individual in the Bible, and the man who will become a father to Pharaoh, and who will forgive his brothers and invite them to come to Egypt to survive. If you want it, here it is. Come and get it. Make your mind up fast. If you want it anytime, I can give it. But you better hurry, because it may not last. Did I hear you say that there must be a catch? Will you walk away from a fool and his money? Thank you, friends, for joining me. Come and get it. Give thanks, share, care, and love your family. Be well, be happy, be thankful, be grateful, be blessed, and share those blessings with those around you. And I look forward to seeing you all next week. Love to you all. Be well, be happy, be healthy. Shabbat shalom. Take care. Thanks.